Olá, meu nome é Marcos Frank e 4 anos após o aclamado If the Sky Came Down, os finlandeses do Lost Society estão de volta, mas não como você os conhecia. Esqueça as comparações com o thrash metal do início da carreira. O novo álbum Hell is a State of Mind, Samy Elbanna e companhia ficam a bandeira em um território assumidamente autoral, moderno e, acima de tudo, teatral, unindo o peso de guitarras viscerais à grandiosidade da Babelsberg Film Orchestra. O grupo entrega aquela que promete ser uma das maiores produções do metal finlandês desde o auge do Nightwish. Conversamos com o vocalista e guitarrista Samy Elbanna sobre o processo quase febril de composição, a influência de heróis como Judas Priest e a corajosa decisão de trocar a perfeição digital pelo som orgânico do lendário Finnvox Studios. Segundo Samy, esse é o momento em que o Lost Society para de procurar sua identidade e finalmente se torna quem deveria ser. Com vocês, o homem simpatia, Samy Elbanna. I don't take much of your time.
Oh, no worries, man. No worries.
I will do a beginning here with talking about the press release that the moment Lost Society stops like searching and starts becoming.
Mm.
How did the internal process of letting go of the thrash metal label feel, and how did you embrace this modern and unapologetic sound?
Well, for us, I mean, ever since the first record happened, so ever since the sort of the bigger thrash sound happened, one thing that's always been important for us is that we write whatever comes out of ourselves, basically. We never consciously decided to write thrash metal in the same way as we never consciously decided that we would stop writing thrash metal, if that makes sense. Like, because for myself, for example, I'll pick up a guitar, start writing something, and that's basically what's going to happen for the next record. It's all about influences that we have, inside music and outside music. So I'm just everything we observe in the world. And for us, we've been touring for the last 13 years now since the first record. And I feel like, when you see so much of the world, you see a lot of different cultures, you get inspired by a lot of different cultures. And it's it's somewhat of a maturity in the songwriting and the sense that you realize that you're able to take influences from all of the different kinds of music that you like and bring them together into the art that you do. So, for me, like it never like thrash metal wasn't my roots. Like Iron Maiden, Kiss, Zeppelin, stuff like that, that was my roots. But I started falling in love with Metallica and Slayer and Anthrax. And after that, I started falling in love with pop music and rap music and everything. And I feel like, the ultimate test of a musician is how are you going to bring together all of those influences into making one piece of music that sounds like what you are, but also, it's obviously it can't just be a big mess. It has to make sense. And, in that sense, I feel like, Hell is a State of Mind, just as like if the sky came down or no absolution, they all make sense and they're all our progression and evolution as musicians, as songwriters, and basically just as human beings experiencing the world.
Cool. And you've mentioned him and Nightwish, Children of Bottom, of course, as influences regarding their ethos. How does that specific Finnish spirit, being bold and doing what others won't, manifest in this new album?
It manifests with, I mean, just like down to the basics. It's like, I feel like we're mixing together a lot of things that are in a way untraditional, but in a sense they have a long-standing history. So in a sense, we're creating something very modern, but bringing a lot of sort of old elements that built up our musical DNA into it. Like if off the top of my head, obviously a big theme on the record is the orchestral elements, the string section that we have, which I think it's a cool sort of it's a cool sort of like tip of the hat to, back to Children of Bodom and Stradivarius and stuff like that, because obviously they were in the front runners with bringing classical music and pretty much like molding it into a metal shape. And that's stuff that we listened to ever since we were kids. And obviously Finland has a very rich history with classical musicians to begin with Sibelius. And I feel like a lot of the arrangements that we've done on this record, some of the parts sound very heavily influenced from even back in those days. So I think that's definitely goes to show that we're taking untraditional elements and putting them together, but in a way that it makes sense in the larger picture. Because, we are, if anything, we are a product of our influences and, and everything. And our heroes are, Tuomas Holopainen, Aleksi Laiho, Ville Valo and people like that. And I feel like this is the perfect opportunity to bring out those elements and bring out those influences and bring something of ourselves into the mix, obviously, but at the same time respecting where it's all come from.
Cool. And Blood Diamond reportedly started over a hip hop beat and evolved into a, for me at least, a cinematographic masterpiece. Can you describe a little bit the exact moment you realized that orchestral strings were the missing piece for the band's new DNA?
Well, honestly, it's something that we've sort of played around with a lot with we had a song called Into Eternity on No Absolution, and we were very grateful to have the great Apocalyptica on it with their cellos. And the last record we had a song called Awake, which obviously had a lot of sort of orchestral elements, but in a smaller scale than what we're doing now. And I feel like, once a record is out, there's always going to be the first couple of sessions in the studio where you're getting rid of the old music still from your body and making way for something new to be created. And I think it was Blood Diamond that started with that hip hop beat, but it had a very strong melody, and we all somehow felt very strongly towards it. But what we wanted to do is like, how could we take it absolutely the other way or the opposite direction than what we've done in the past? And it was just a mixture. Well, hey, how about we do like a Dimmu Borgir-esque kind of, violin arrangement? And once we realized that it sounds great and we realized that it's a song that we keep coming back to, we were like, well, hey, what if we sort of give ourselves the liberty to have an orchestra at our disposal, and we actually let that be a possibility that we could use it on the whole record. And I feel like, it comes with its own challenges, of course, because it also has a risk that when you know that you're able to do something with an orchestra, you'll put too much of it somewhere, because obviously it's a band, it's, four people in this band, and that's the core of everything. It has to be the core of everything. But once we realized, our own sort of formula of how to make the songs better by adding, just a beautiful touch of harmony and melody with the orchestra, I think it turned out better than we ever could have imagined.
I love every part of the album that has those orchestral elements in it. And there's a lot of them. It's a very different album. If you think about the last one when the sky was coming down, this one now is like so different from the last album. And I think you are pushing the fan base a little bit, don't you
I
think?
think what I think a good thing about our music is that we like to challenge our audience always. And because I feel like, we have people who have continued as Lost Society fans from Fast Loud Death, and we have a lot of people who jumped in from If the Sky Came Down, and then there's even a lot of people who jumped in from the singles from this record. And I think the thing that sort of all of them have in common is the fact that they respond to our authenticity, and the fact that they can sense in the music that we're doing exactly what we want. It's like we don't bow down to please a certain group of people. It's like I think you can hear always on our records that we like to challenge ourselves musically, but we also like we don't really care about boundaries because we want to keep it interesting for ourselves as much as, everyone else also because I've always had the sort of mantra that if the goal in life or in music is just to create the same album over and over and over again, it's going to get boring pretty quickly. And I'd rather sort of, in 20 or 30 years look back and listen to all of my music as sort of a diary as it is also, and listen to it and remember like, oh, okay, those were the years where that was the main theme or that was the main theme. And still throughout, from Fast Loud Death to Hell is a State of Mind, you can still hear the same band if you actually listen to it. It's like I still don't think it's a different band who's in the music, even though the evolution has been so big. I mean, in a similar way that I'm sure a lot of people could argue that, Kill 'Em All and Saint Anger is a different band. It sounds very different, and that was their evolution. But still, I mean, not necessarily an album I listen to very often, but I can respect the fact that, especially, with Metallica, they've done always what they want to do. They've always stayed true to themselves, be it a good or a bad thing, but at least they haven't cared about opinions to that fact.
That you picked Saint Anger as a how do we say how to relate with. It's kind of and kill
I mean,
them
I
all
love it
like
in
super
I love it in a
extreme.
way because I mean, definitely because I love the fact how, obviously one of the biggest arguments that people have towards Lost Society is, that we were thrash and now we're not thrash. But I think a weird way is that they often bring Metallica as the example, and then they're like, well, you know what, Metallica also sold out. Then it's like, well, I mean, if that's like your argument that you're using that Metallica also sold out and they betrayed everyone, then I don't mind if that's the argument because Metallica inspires me as a band that always did what they did creatively, and many people will say that Black Album was a sellout album. I think it's their best record, so I might just be wrong.
No, but it's interesting that you take Metallica as an example because there's a lot of bands that did this change. Not only Metallica, it was Def Leppard, it was Megadeth, it was so many bands that took around and experimented with other stuff. Creator did that with a lot of albums. Even with the last album, they have experiments as well. And it is interesting. The challenging point that I mentioned was not because of the changing point, but it is a challenging album to hear and to experience because it's so different. There's a lot of guitar playing that needs like to be re-listened all the time. So you have the experience that you meant to give people to experience. The like Blood Diamond, it is a direct to the point song, but at the same time, it's such a different song than you normally listen when you listen to a rock and roll song. Do you know what I mean?
I
It's
do,
it
yeah. I think it sort of comes with the territory also because I feel like one way of thinking about it is also that if you think of the sort of modern metal era that we're in, with I mean mainly metalcore bands with Spirit Box and Falling in Reverse and I Prevail, stuff like that, I feel like because of those bands, a typical song has become a very certain way that it's very to the point. As you said, it's like, you'll have a riff and a blast beat and a chorus, and that's basically
exactly.
it. But that's why I feel like this record also it dives back to our biggest influences, which are, a record called Hey Stupid by Alice Cooper or Seventh Son of a Seventh Son by Iron Maiden, or, it's songs that have a lot of character inside of them and a lot of dynamics and a lot of changes within them. And I feel like it's cool to sort of bring back that sort of songwriting aspect also, because I feel like for a long time, songs are, I mean, I don't know whether or not it's because of that, but I think TikTok has had a big impact on also metal music. It's like people, they don't really want to challenge anyone anymore. It's like they give you a very straightforward piece of art. They're like, that's it, you feel one emotion during the song, but nothing more. But I feel like it's cool if you make an album that is very theatrical, like this album is, in my opinion. I would think that it wouldn't really serve the songs if we made it feel only like one certain way throughout one song. So I understand absolutely what you mean, that it's more of like a traditional heavy metal album in that sense, that the song structures
Exactly.
are far more intense.
Exactly, and there's more structuring.
Yeah,
You have more lead guitars. You have more of your singing, and your singing, your vocal. You have a vocal versatility. It doesn't uh, it doesn't strike at first, but if you listen, there is a lot of soul in your singing. It
thank
comes from
you.
like those demonic screams. It goes to falsettos. Even rap leading moments in the songs, and you pushed yourself further. I think at some points, I think you are everywhere in this album, and
I think
I think
so.
you have you. I think you had to prepare yourself so much to be dynamic this time. Uh, had you did you feel like you broke any personal limits during these recording sessions for this album?
Oh, all of them. In a way, like we laughed about it a lot with Jonas, who we wrote the record and recorded it with. That I've almost always like I've accidentally just written very difficult vocal lines, and then the only sort of alternative I have is to learn it. I have to learn new styles and new techniques. Sorry, and with this new record, I did consciously want to sort of make the distinction to people that it's not just, Samy Elbanna, a guitarist who has to sing, but it's Samy Elbanna, a guitarist and a singer. Because, I always have loved to sing, but I haven't been good enough to write the kind of versatile things that I'm doing on this record. And I feel like it's sort of like an ever-growing evolution also. Like I feel like I want to challenge myself to get better as a singer, to look at those, to sort of, I feel like you have to compare yourself to the best vocalists and the best musicians always of the whole scene. And what I like to do is just consciously write things that I could hear myself doing, and then I just have to learn them. There's no alternative. And so with that, I mean, I just spent hours and hours and hours in the rehearsal place, in the studio, to make sure that not only can I do it in the studio, but of course also on tour afterwards. And I think it's a cool progression to see, from the last record and especially from the first record, it's all the time doing a bit more with the vocals, but I will always make sure that I'll never record something that I'm not fully certain that I can do, in my abilities. And it is important to me that, we're not just going to use auto tune on everything. It's like you actually have to do what you're doing.
Yeah, and it is interesting if you have also the concept about this new album, the concept of hell. It's super old, but still, there's always something to bring into the lyrics, right?
That's the thing. And, I've been talking about it all day also, that I love being a lyricist and what you can do with lyrics, because, in the end of the day, there's only a number of things that you can sing about. It's like you can sing about death, rebirth, love, breaking up. There's a certain amount of things within any musical genre, but there's also, 7 billion people on Earth, and no one is going to have exactly the same words as you are. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Like, I think it was Dave Grohl who years and years ago said in an interview that, you can sing a lyric that you've written about your own life, and you can have 10,000 people in the crowd, and 10,000 people are singing that same thing, but for 10,000 different reasons. I think that's a very beautiful thought. And, like, especially with this record, it's like, as you said, hell and death and, killing and all that. It's an age-old subject, but this is my angle on it, which is brand new for people. It's always like your words are, you're the only person who can give your exact words about something. No one else can do the exact same thing.
Yeah, and it looks like you had to. write also music being sick, with fever and things like that. It's it's a
Yes.
challenging thing to be working in a band. You have to do things as I know it is challenging also to work with a band.
We're
But
the
um,
worst. No, no. I mean, no, but it is true. It is true, of course, that this profession is so unusual in so many ways. I mean, just even from the point, that you're sort of working all the time, but never actually. And like when you're playing a gig, you have 22 hours in the day that you're not doing anything. You're just waiting, and then you have 2 hours time to do your actual job. And obviously the pressure comes along with it that what if that 2 hours isn't fully perfect and fully the way that you want it to be? I mean, it's a very difficult sort of way of life, but that is exactly what it is that, you don't do it half-assed. You have to be fully inside and fully committed to doing this. And, I mean, we've been blessed enough that we've been able to do this for 13 years, and we don't take it for granted, and we recognize the fact that it can be taken away from us in a heartbeat, and that's why we respect what we do.
and it also interesting that you bring that to your videos. On the last video you guys released, there is like you in red being almost buried. Is this like the correct definition? You being buried into mud, or what
I
was
mean,
the idea?
it's the concept of being buried by something you love, which is like a contradictory thing because on one hand it's something that you need that addiction, which for us is music, we couldn't live without it. But on the other hand, you realize how it is everything. It's literally the thing that you do when you wake up during the day and when you go to sleep, and it's a scary fact also. And the whole song, Is This What You Wanted, is based upon the fact that it's written from a musician's point of view of how, I mean, I'm 30 years old and I've been doing this for 15 years. I've missed a lot of important moments. I've lost, loved ones, and I've lost, the opportunity to see them for the last weeks of them being here. And it's terrifying and it's scary when you don't know what might happen at home when you're on tour, but it's just something that it's a risk that you have to take because we need this to be alive. We need music to do this.
Wow, this is such a cool thing you said about us losing things because we are following a dream. And
Exactly.
follow a dream is pretty hard, especially for people that are more sensitive than others, especially musicians. Musicians are super sensitive and they feel everywhere. So
Yeah.
if you have to take like a place or something in the album that you were most sensitive of, which part of the album would be your point? That's the moment I break down.
For me, the moment is like I mean, in a weird way, it's both the first and the last song because those are sort of the moments of rebirth and the ultimate self-reflection in the last song. And I mean, I think it's natural because for Afterlife, I feel like it's a strange sort of duality with the fact that it's a beautiful thing in a way that you're granted another opportunity at living, but at the same time, it's devastating because it's taking you away from everything you ever knew. But, in the same way with the last track, you realize that it's a part of life. It has to happen. Something has to die in order for something else to be born. And that's the underlying theme of the whole album. And I think it's something so universal, but I feel like the way I put it and the way we created this whole musical story along with the lyrical story, I think it's something that it will definitely have an impact, I feel like.
And when will we like have the experience of a Lost Society show here in Brazil so we can
Oh
know
my God. I
how
wish
to
it.
sit?
I honestly, I mean, I'm so sorry to all of our fans in Brazil that it has taken us this long because, it's for the most boring reasons that we haven't been able to go. It's the logistics, it's the economy, it's all that stuff. We would have come there, the day after the record comes out if it was up to us, but it's just, but the good thing is that I hear that all the time there are more and more Finnish bands touring all over Latin America and definitely in Brazil, many shows even in Brazil. And I hope we can be, the next in that long list of bands.
I expect that real soon because also working with this interview, so you guys can come over here
That's
because
amazing. I really
you
appreciate it.
yeah, you owe us that.
Absolutely.
In the end of this interview, I would like to ask you what kind of legacy do you expect to leave with your music?
I expect to leave a legacy of music that was always what we wanted and to sort of a message that we did it our way, to quote old Frank Sinatra to say we did it our way. And I mean it's a cliche, but it was we sort of started things on our own terms and we've always carried this out all along with our terms, and it's not necessarily been the easiest way, definitely hasn't been the easiest way, but I feel like it's a way that will make sure that we can do this for the rest of our lives because we're not compromising our art for anything, and we're not trying to please people, we're not trying to do this and that, we're just four guys who love writing music and love metal music, and we're doing it to the best of our abilities in a way that we enjoy ourselves.
Awesome, Sammy. Thank you so much for the time for this interview. You're always such an amazing person to speak to,
Thank you
and
so much.
there's a lot of love here for you in Brazil. Hope to see you soon.
Oh, me too. I really hope to be there as soon as possible. Thank you so much, man, and take care. All the best.
You too. Have a great night still.
You too. You too, man. Cheers. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.